Hi, my name is Liz Moughon, and thank you so much for joining for a short discussion. I am a photographer and filmmaker based in Portland, Oregon, but I grew up in Irwin, Tennessee, and I dual enrolled at Milligan during my last 2 years of high school, where I took most of the film photography classes. That was at the time that Alice Anthony was teaching, and I actually took one class with Will Major, both incredible people. And since leaving there, I finished my undergrad degree at Ohio University in photojournalism, interned at a few newspapers, and now I'm beginning to focus on learning about film, but photography is still very much a part of me. And today I want to show 3 recent stories that I did, and it's actually a lot more personal work. I have slowly come to believe in the importance of photographing yourself and the people close to you, not necessarily prioritizing that. It's different for every person, but it has truly helped me understand the impact of what I ask of others when I force myself to be vulnerable with my own experiences. And that has helped tremendously in connecting to other people. And so I want to show you a little bit about how I got to that point. So I'll start with a story about myself that I did over the past year, and then a story about my dad, and then a story that's photojournalism in nature that I did for a newspaper. And I just kind of want to walk you through the trajectory the past few years, and I hope it's inspiring. So in the summer of 2019, I was interning at the Los Angeles Times, and I was driving back cross country from California to Tennessee, and I was experiencing extreme fatigue. I didn't understand why, but everything was heavy. I was incredibly exhausted, and I just explained it away. This went on for a few weeks until finally, 2 days before my 23rd birthday, I was having difficulty breathing. So I checked myself into the emergency room, and even though it was full, they rushed me back, put me in a bed, stuck me with IVs. I was in tears. I didn't know what was going on. I have never had health problems before, and I stayed in the ICU for 2 days, and I was discharged on my birthday. And after I was discharged from the hospital, my sister took me out for a birthday dinner, and she said, "You were a few days away from slipping into a diabetic coma, and you would not have survived past 24 hours. In the hospital, the nurse said, "Repeat after me, I am a diabetic. It's part of the coping process." And this is a self-portrait I took months later after I went off of insulin shots. At first, I had to prick my fingers about 8 times a day to test my blood sugar, and then every time I ate, I would give myself a shot of insulin. Since then, I have started wearing medical equipment, and right here is an insulin pump. And so I attach this to different parts of my body for 3 days at a time. And anytime I need a boost of insulin, I just press a few buttons on a little device that I hold. It's kind of like a cell phone, and it gives me that boost. So going back to the road trip and to the couple months leading up to this, I lost about 20 pounds, was incredibly weak, but I explained everything away. That summer I was training for a marathon, so I explained the weight loss away to that. I explained the fatigue away to just working really hard, really long hours. My mouth was incredibly dry, but I explained that away to the California heat. And then there were a couple other bizarre symptoms that I won't get into. But I just never had any other serious health problems, so I just carried on. My dad's a doctor, and after leaving the hospital, I had to finish a project the immediate week after that my sister helped me with, and then I moved back home, and I ended up staying with my parents for 2 months, and this is the first cheat sheet that my dad wrote for me. showing what my target numbers should be and symptoms that I would experience if my blood sugar numbers were out of range. So for 2 months, I lived back in my childhood bedroom in Irwin, where my only responsibility was to take care of my body. I was 23. It was the first really break I had since college, since internships, since just running and going and constantly. So just a little bit of scientific explanation here. Insulin is a hormone that converts your carbs into energy. Carbs are the gas in your body. If you don't have carbs, you cannot function. And the energy level, the sugar level in your blood is measured by blood sugar. And if your blood sugar is too high, that means you do not have enough insulin in your body. And long term, like in the short term, when my blood sugar is high, I don't feel a thing. In the long term, if this goes on for years and years and years, it can lead to blindness or neuropathy, which is nerve damage that can require amputation. When your blood sugar is low, it means there's too much insulin in your body, so you need to eat carbs to bring it back up. And in the immediate, I start to feel lightheaded and I can pass out. And long term, this could lead to brain damage or death. The goal is to keep it between 80 and 180 in the gray graph. And this gray graph is an app that's on my phone that connects to another monitor on my body, which you'll see later. So without carbs, you cannot survive. I know one thing that is actually a perk to having this diagnosis is all that I've learned about nutrition on a scientific level. I have heard many people say if you want to lose weight, just cut out all carbs. And it's not cutting it out, it's like choosing when to have it. So if I have carbs right before a workout, immediately those carbs are being converted to energy. So that's the most efficient way of having carbs. But you don't have to cut them out. And so the reason that I was so extremely weak at the beginning of the summer is because without insulin, basically everything I was eating was just like disappearing. And so my body was feeding off of fat and off of muscle. And if your body does that too quickly, it creates a toxic acid, and that acid can kill you. And I just want to say that, ironically, at that time of weight loss, I was the most content in my skin I've ever been. I don't say that that is not something I'm proud of. It is just something that I noticed I was feeling, and it made me stop and think, because really I should be the most proud of my body when I'm strong and when I'm active and when I'm healthy and I'm feeling good. It's not by some arbitrary size that culture tells us we should be. And so I just say this because it's something I'm working through, and I want to share in case any of you are working through that. But now recognizing that in myself has made me think, I might have been a little bit smaller then, but I couldn't do anything. And I would rather be more confident in my body when I can be active and when I can move as should be. So diabetes really isn't too difficult. Type 1, at least. I don't know. I have never experienced type 2. The difference being people with type 1 don't produce any insulin. People with type 2 do not produce enough insulin. And I would say the first year is the most difficult for type 1 because it is when you're learning everything. But after a while, it starts to feel like a new routine, and it's not so bad. But still, it is something I think about constantly, and that can be hard. Just a short example for you. One day I came back after a long day, and my roommate had made cookies, and I just was like, they were so good. I just ate one, and then I ate two, and then I ate three all at once. And then I was like, oh shoot, I haven't given myself insulin yet, and I gave myself insulin. But I had eaten too much sugar too fast before my body had time to process the insulin, that my blood sugar just shot up, and so I had to work out to bring it down quickly. And You know, I could still eat 3 cookies, that's fine. I would just have had to eat them slower and balance it out with energy and insulin. It does feel at times that my health is like graded and analyzed, and like I'm literally attaching my health to this arbitrary line that I cannot always keep where it should be. But in the frustrating moments, I cannot stress how much it helps to make something like this, like to just play around with a screenshot on my phone and then look for images of landscapes or self-portraits and put it together and say like, hey, how can I turn this frustrating emotion into something artistic? And that's really what this project has been. It's been a coping mechanism. Another example is, so I have a half cup of oatmeal and a banana almost every morning for breakfast. And if I immediately go on a run, I actually don't need any insulin because I am just immediately converting my food into energy, and I can bypass insulin. But if I go on a walk, I'll need like 2 units of insulin. Or if I go and just sit down at my desk, I need like 6 units of insulin, and I need to give it like 30 minutes in advance so that it has time to work through my body. And so it's really, this diagnosis is just a science. It's a lot of calculations you have to learn, but the good news is a lot of people eat the same thing. A lot of us have our routines, and once you kind of learn, once you get back into your routines and habits, it's a lot of the same. And yeah, again, carbs are the gas in your tank. They're the gas in your body. It's all about balance. And as a diabetic, you can still have all your favorite foods. It's just about different times and balancing it out with energy. And yeah, sometimes my phone will beep at me in the middle of the night if my blood sugar is too high or too low. So if it's too high, I'll get out of bed and do a quick workout to bring it down a little bit faster. I could just give insulin, but it would take a lot longer. So combining insulin with working out just stabilizes it more quickly. Also, when I was diagnosed, my hair had gotten very, very thin, and the doctor told me that meant that when my body shut down all non-essential tasks, it's sunk into survival mode, and hair is not an essential part of your body, like in terms of function. And so it took about 9 months to grow back, and so I took this self-portrait once my hair was finally thick enough to cut bangs again. So this is a blood sugar monitor that I keep on for 10 days at a time, and it is what gives out all the readings on the graphs I've been showing you, and it's just so wonderful. If I didn't have this, I would have to prick my finger every single time, like 8 or 10 times a day, and having this is just wonderful. And I took this self-portrait the first time I went swimming in public with it, and I was insecure, but I came away from that experience realizing that the insecurity I have about wearing this is self-imposed. I don't think anyone really cares or thinks of you or me any less. And so that's a big part of this diagnosis. I think a lot of insecurity is self-imposed, at least speaking from my experience. And this is the little device that connects to my insulin pump that I showed in, I think, the third image. And so anytime I need to give myself insulin, I just punch a few numbers on here, and gives me a boost. But I photographed this after I actually cracked the screen because during quarantine I picked up skateboarding, and so I fell and cracked this. And so for the 3 days it took to replace it, I went back on insulin shots, but it's okay. I am a spiritual person, and one thing my dad said at the beginning was that he believed my life would serve God even more as a diabetic than it would otherwise, and that stuck with me. I have to believe in the redemptive power of formidable experiences, and recognizing like or I'm choosing to believe that there's a reason I have this diagnosis, there's a reason that I'm also a photographer. Now I have a new community of people, and that's one of the most beautiful things about any bad experience is you can always find other people, or any challenging experience, you can always find other people who are dealing with that, and it gives you community and a support system, and then the way you cope with it inspires other people. And again, making self-portraiture in this time, turning any difficult emotion into art, has been a form of therapy. And I still have not had a whole week of numbers that are 100% in range. I'm close, but that's my goal. And at the end of the day, I do consider myself to be a type 1 diabetic still living a normal life. And I just have to believe that there's a reason for this. And I share this because I share this project because it has helped me therapeutically to accept this part that is, to accept what is now a part of my identity, and to be open to the community I'm now a part of, and to believe there's a reason for that. And I hope it inspires you, and I know other people who are, I know that you're an example to people in your life as well who can look at you in whatever circumstance you're going through and be inspired by how you're managing that. And that example, it inspires the people around us to be even better and to hold on. This is another truth that took me a while to fully grasp. I grew up in Irwin again. I come from a large family. I was homeschooled. So I was very curious about new places and new people, and what made me love photography was how it was a way to meet new people. And I think that's wonderful and beautiful and magical. And in the past 2 years, I've also realized it's also a way to get to know the people who are closest to you. And so that's what I want to show you next. And so it happens that sometimes the most powerful stories are right in front of you. And at the time I started photographing myself with diabetes, I started photographing my dad, who's a doctor. And he is a small town doctor. He's known a lot of his patients for decades. And so when it gets to the point that they can no longer come see him and would have to have hospice care come to their house, he says, I'll come see you on my days off. So he's a modern day house call doctor. And so I started photographing him during those 2 months that I was back home. And it made me think of this time when I was 15. I was learning how to drive stick shift, and I accompanied him on a house call for my very first time. And at the time, I really thought nothing of it because my dad just went on these house calls twice a week. It was just what he did, and that was it. It was just what he did. I had no context for knowing that that was abnormal. I thought a lot of doctors did that. And of course, that I was 15, and then now I'm 23 working on this project, and I'm accompanying him on a second house call. And I have these contexts. I've been to college, I've studied abroad, I've traveled to a few different countries, and now I'm like, whoa, like Dad just does this on his time off because he really cares about his patients. My dad was actually hesitant to do this story because he said, in the old days, house call doctors would work all day, and then they would get on a horse and they would ride to somebody's house in the middle of the night and work all night. And they were like the saviors in a way to their whole community because they were the only physician. And he does not want to be associated with that because he's like, I do this because I want to. If my dad wasn't doing this, these patients would still get care. He is just choosing to do it because of the relationships he has with his patients. And so my dad would say over and over again when I was working on this project, other house call doctors are the real heroes. I don't know why you want to photograph me. Other house call doctors are the real heroes. And so, that was that was just, that shows you a bit of his heart. And I've just never seen my dad in these homes where people open up to him so deeply. And on the one hand, like, I thought I was unique in my family for wanting to get to know people in their homes and earning their trust as they're being vulnerable with me about their past experiences. I never saw medicine and photojournalism as having similarities, but the more I talked to my dad and the more I saw him the more I saw of his personal life and the more I saw how much people were opening up to him and the way people looked at him and the way people welcomed my dad into their private spaces and revealed intimate aspects of their personal lives as well as their physical bodies. I was like, oh wow, Dad's been doing this before I was even born. Like my dad and I actually care about a lot of the same things. We just came to it through different lenses, no pun intended. We came through it from different places. And that connection definitely helped me relate to my dad more deeply. We never have been super close, even though in a lot of ways I think we're very similar. And in addition to that, I was now a patient for my very first time. This was like a month or two after I was diagnosed with a health condition I'll have the rest of my life. I had never been in a bed in the hospital. I've always been never been a patient. And so now I understand the vulnerability that comes with opening. I understand the vulnerability that comes with being a patient and having that relationship with your doctor. And so, growing up in a small town, Irwin, you see, like, this is my dad walks across the street every day to go to work. We live in a ranch house, and he has like a 30-second walk to work. And going around town, I would always introduce myself as Dr. Moughon's daughter. And people would always say, like, your dad is so special because he never rushes examinations. He takes time with us. He even draws our blood. And I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. But I never had context. And now I see how much that means because I was experiencing being a patient for the first time. And now I valued how much these patients trusted my dad and how he was able to be a safe space for them. And also, as you can see, the office hasn't changed a bit. And since the 80s, all the furniture is the same, the wallpaper is the same, everything's the same. And I think that's sweet. In this picture, it's actually my neighbor who has known us for 30 years, and my dad is also his doctor. So yeah, this is his nurse and one of his patients, and yeah, I think something also that sets my dad's experience apart is that he could work for a medical practice and make a little bit more money by working with a whole group of doctors, but he doesn't want that. He likes being able to spend a lot of time with his patients and whatnot, and so he like intentionally takes a pay cut to maintain this lifestyle, with his in terms of holding on to these relationships in the way he does. And yeah, he has 8 kids and I think 12 grandkids now. He met my mom in medical school when she was in nursing school, and they got married and moved to Irwin. And also, my dad practices what he preaches. He exercises about an hour and a half every day and an extended 2 to 3 hours on Saturdays when his favorite sports teams played on the television. So yeah, this project is ongoing, but in doing it, I am slowly getting to know my dad a little bit better, and I am understanding his motivations. and I'm seeing a bit more of his heart. And it has showed me that really photographing the people closest to you can be infinitely harder, because when you're photographing other families, you can just kind of leave at any point. Like if it gets awkward, it feels like the day has been long and they need some space, you can just leave. But with your family, you don't. And at this point, I was living with him, and so my dad has his walls, and it was hard to know how much to push when I was only going to like walk in my bedroom and then I have dinner with him that evening. And also, it made me think about even more the responsibility we have as photojournalists and the trust that people give us. And I think that, at least I thought about that even more when it's my family, and you have to go back and live with them. And so really, how did you represent them? Were you honest and truthful in every way? And so I appreciate my dad being vulnerable with me, and I'm thankful for the lessons that we've learned from each other. And I've sort of touched on this already, but now I want to transition to a story I did about suicide loss for the San Francisco Chronicle. And it focuses around the surviving brother of Kyle. Kyle was 18 when he took his life by jumping off of the Golden Gate Bridge. Someone jumps to their death every 13 days off of this bridge. And unlike other structures, other iconic structures like the Eiffel Tower, Sears Tower, this does not have a suicide barrier. This is Kyle's grandmother, Kathy Cantway, and she says that grandparents are often the forgotten mourners during tragedies like this because they're trying to be strong for their children, and so they compartmentalize their own grief. Kyle jumped at 11:45 a.m., September 20th, 2013, and passerbyers said that they heard him yell out "Yahoo!" when he jumped. And these are portraits that his classmates drew for him a few days after, and the family never took them down. They're still hanging in their home. And this is Manuel Gamboa. He is Kyle's brother. He is 2 years older than Kyle, and Kyle was always funny and happy and the glue both in his family and his friend group, and he never told Manuel or anyone that he was struggling with anything. Manuel's favorite last memory was going to the California State Fair a couple weeks before Kyle's death, because at that time they got to spend together, just the two of them. I also did a film about Manuel, and maybe I can see if I can link it to the end of this, but the film I think is even more powerful than the photo story. This is Kyle's father looking around Kyle's bedroom. They did not change it at all, and he's still looking for answers as to why Kyle left. This is the last drink that Kyle had right before he jumped, and his mother's holding it, and she never washed it. And this is the iconic view from the bridge. It's the second most popular place in the world to commit suicide after a bridge in China. Every month, at least one member from the Gamboa family attend the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation Board meeting. And for Manuel, his brother, he lives in San Francisco. For his parents, who normally come, they live in Sacramento, so that's 2 hours each way. So every month they drive 4 hours round trip to come and speak for 2 minutes to share a memory of Kyle, to petition that a suicide barrier be built. And the summer that I was working on this story in 2018, they had just started construction on a suicide barrier, and the Gamboa family are continuing to attend these meetings until the barrier is complete. This is a drawing that a child made for Manuel, his brother, at one of these meetings. For his parents, they really became activists, and any chance they have to talk about this, they take, and it has been a way to channel their grief. For Manuel, it's a little bit harder, and he's taken a little bit longer to open up, but the film that I created, I think, came at a good time in his life, because he said he was finally able to talk about this in a way he had not been able to talk about before. Also, every summer, an event called Names in the Sand takes place, where families of people who have jumped from the bridge all come together, and they write over 2,000 names in the sand to remember every bridge suicide victim. And at this event, Kyle's grandmother attended. And this is the pole from which Kyle jumped. So that brings me to the end. I'm going to link 2 videos as well. As I said, I am transitioning from photojournalism to, well, I take that back. I'm not transitioning from, but I am right now focusing on learning a little bit more about film. I think of it as another tool that I want to have, because I think every story leans in a different creative direction, and I wanted to show you this photo story to see how it worked in images. And if you go and now watch the video, it's about 5 minutes. I think the video is more effective in pulling out the emotion that Manuel was experiencing, and so I just want to be able to have the ability to make a film when stories lean in that direction. And I also recently, last month, did a film about pregnancy loss, and I'm going to link that one as well. But I just want to end on this note that it can feel overwhelming in this industry where so many people are talented. There are so many different ways to tell stories, and it's like, how can you stand out? How do you balance making an income with creating the stories that you really are passionate about? And I am definitely trying to figure this out. I've only been freelancing for like 3 months, and I'm seeing and hearing and beginning to feel that your style and your story is what sets you apart. Like, I can talk about diabetes and living with a household dad, doctor, and like, that's part of my story, and I hope that somehow it relates to people. And every single one of you in your class has an incredible story that you are intimately familiar with. And it's like, just at the point where you feel that it's so deep and personal that other people may not relate is exactly where other people will say, wow, that person gets me. That person was brave enough and vulnerable enough, sincere enough to open up, so maybe I can too. And so your story, immediately gives you a platform that not everyone has, but others can relate to. And then in the style in which you share either your story or the style in which you share other stories, that style is also your own, and it's so unique to you that other people are going to want to be a part of that. And so the more that you carve out a space that seems risky in terms of the way you see the world, is actually at the point at which other people are going to want to be a part of that. That's actually the magical place. And for me, over the past year or 2, I am beginning to see that myself. I started out in photojournalism just telling any story I could possibly get my hands on, and that's totally fine, but I am trying to figure out what I want to say in the grand scheme of things. And I think coming back home to my heart and to my family is like grounding me and resetting me as I now enter a new chapter. And so I just share all of this to say that this is what's been on my heart in the past year, and I hope it resonates with you, and I hope it inspires you to make work that terrifies you, but in just the right way, because that's where the magic happens, and that's where you can really have an impact. And yeah, I think that's all. I hope this made sense. I hope it felt connected. And I really care about this work, and I really believe in its ability to bring people together, and I would love to talk to any of you. Please feel free to email me and send work or just chat. We can have a video call or whatever, but I would love to see what you're working on, and I hope this was helpful. I can't wait to see the things that you all do in the future. Hope you have a better year. Happy 2021. Thank you.